spontaneity is very important.
This particular kid asked, why am I not part of worship? Is that because I'm not baptized?
So kneeling down, standing, all these are the visible expression of worshiping. So what should be the attitude of a worshipper?
Hello everyone, welcome to the Faith Factor. This is the second segment of the Heart of Worship. We've been discussing about the importance of worship. Today we are continuing with our second segment of the Heart of Worship, where we were discussing about the idea of worship, what worship is. So, Dr. Roji, like I mentioned in the introduction, we are going to learn a lot more about the practice and the practitioner. Practice being worship and practitioner being worshipper. Who is a worshipper? First, in Christian sense, we understood what is worship. It is Christocentrism. But who is a worshipper from the biblical context, so that we can set off our conversation.
Friends, worship is an act of an individual involving his entire being in this act of worship. A worshipper is someone who has experienced the God of the Bible directly through Jesus Christ. So that means this person who is now into an act of worship before God is a person whose inner eyes are enlightened, for his heart is God-oriented now, because he has experienced forgiveness, he has experienced sanctification. Now as a process, it is continuing in his life as a result of the self-sacrificial death of Christ. So his inner eyes are opened up. He knows what has happened to him as a result of his encounter with God and how God is continuing to work in his life. In addition to that, when his inner eyes are enlightened, his mind is oriented towards God. So a true worshipper will be focusing on God in a context of worship than anything else around him. It's not music, it's not the person around him, it is not anything, the place or the setting that he is in. Rather, in the act of worship, his mind is set upon God. That is where his mind is stuck to God himself. But when his mind is stuck to God, it is in a humble recognition of his own creatureliness. Okay? His own creatureliness and his own or her own sinfulness. Okay? So on this side, the realization is of his own or her own creatureliness and sinfulness. But on the other side, there is a strong sense of awe about God's holiness, his greatness, his power, his majesty. That is what is on the other side. So the true worshipper is the one who realizes that I am in front of someone before whom I am not worthy to come by my own self. Okay? But I am enabled by the work of the Spirit in and through Christ Jesus to come before him, because he is here and now active in my heart and in my life. And he is there as my creator God, to whom I can come for help and assistance. And the Spirit is functional in this entire process.
So the role of Spirit is really, really important. Very much. In the practitioner's life.
Yes.
Understood.
So how is the worshipper important? Why is it not just okay to focus on the act of worship? Why is it so important to focus on the worshipper himself, the person himself?
Okay. Simply because God is dealing with a person. God has dealt in the past with a person, and it is the person's response is worship. If it is mere activity which is more important, or that takes priority, then it can turn out to be mere ritualistic, or it can be simply mechanical. But God is interested in being. Now, Westminster Catechism says the sole purpose of God in creating human beings is to worship Him.
Just to understand, Westminster Catechism is what?
It's a declaration, confessional one, which is used in the church context for teaching. In the mainline churches, it is used. So the Westminster Catechism says that, the sole purpose of God creating human beings is to worship Him. Okay? If that is the purpose of God, then today my being must be involved in it.
So it's a relationship.
Definitely. That's why the person is important. So there cannot be a worship without the involvement of the person in a very active form of relationship with God.
So, in a way, God is not that interested in the acts, but on the one who is performing it.
Correct.
Understood.
Acts are mere overflowing of the inner experience of the person.
Oh, yeah.
See, in a context of worship, as a surrender, I lift up my hand. That's because as a person, I feel that I must surrender before Him when I look at His glory.
Good.
In an act of worship, while singing, a worshiper may kneel down and weep and cry for help.
Good.
It is because the person is involved. So the external actions are mere the overflow of the inner experience. So if the person is not involved, kneeling down has no meaning.
Good.
Kneeling down is meaningful because it is a visible expression of the inner experience.
So kneeling down, standing, all these are the visible expression of worship.
Right.
So what should be the attitude of a worshiper?
Wow, that's wonderful. Attitude of the worshipper must be like someone approaching in the presence of another person who is supposed to be way above him and beyond his approach or her approach. So the reverence, the respect, the love of what you have received from the person, and also fear. Fear of who the person is. It's not a negative fear, but the sense of the greatness of the person in whose presence you are entering. That fills your heart. And it is in that attitude that one becomes humble. So when I and you approach God's presence in praise and worship, we are celebrating God's mercy in our life of enabling us sinful beings to be in His presence. That is what is celebrated. It's not me who is great or who is now in this great presence, but it is celebration is His mercy in my life. And once that is celebrated, worship becomes really meaningful. Then actions, externalities are mere secondary expressions of the real personal experience that happens in our heart every moment.
Understood. So, in a way, when it's two individuals meeting and one of them is really up in the hierarchy, up in the level, it is a sense of getting your humility, right? So, humility is the key to very great worship. Is that what you say?
Oh, definitely. So worship is the response of the worshipper's experience of that great person. For example, let me say, when I am in the presence of our president, mere recognition of who she is makes me humble. And that gives me no ground to be arrogant and proud before her. My every action is out of respect. Whether, according to Indian culture, I touch her feet or I merely bow down and shake hand, it's an expression of my respect for her. At the same time, I'm fearful of her is because, not in a negative sense, but because she is the first person of the whole nation. Right. And me as a citizen, when I come, I recognize that here is a unique, special person in whose presence I am. Same thing coming to God. When I come, my reverence is out of my recognition of who He is.
So worship is a great opportunity to be with Almighty and, out of fear and humility. Now, sir, we've understood as individual side of worship. I would want to understand the team side of it. How biblical is it? A team leading a worship? Because it becomes 10 individuals leading another 10 individual
You
into
mean
it.
choir?
Yeah, we can make it that way.
Choir. Well, it's very much biblical. You see that in the Old Testament. Band of worshippers have led the people who have come into the temple in singing and praising. So it's very much biblical to lead a team leading the entire congregation to worship. Yeah. But how that happens, what they do, how does it serve the congregation is more important than whether it is individual or it's a team that is leading.
I think that speaks a lot more about the roles and
The responsibilities of a worship leader. So, what could be some of the roles and responsibilities of a worship leader for a Christocentric worship?
A worship leader, now we are talking about worship leader, right?
Yeah.
Whether it is a team or an individual.
Right.
A worship leader's role and function or responsibility emerges out of self-consciousness, who he or she is. Now, within a worship context, a worship leader or team or a musician or singer, whoever it is, the leader, the person is little boy, the servant who serves. You understand that? Service idea. So he or she is there on the pulpit as the servant, the minister to the people. So there is no hierarchy created between the two, the congregation. But their purpose to stand in front is only to serve them. Serve what? Sing God's praises, lead them in such a form of worship, enabling the congregation to rise up and join with them to go into the presence of God. See, when preacher is the mouthpiece of God delivering God's message to the congregation, or a prophet in the Old Testament delivers God's message to the people, the worship leader or worship team, the choir, takes the congregation along with them as a catalyst. It's a catalyst role. They take them along with them into God's presence. Right? So first people are taken into God's presence, and then the message comes to the prophet or to the preacher, to the congregation. That is where both are. God is serving the community and community is serving God. That is the richness of total worship that's happening. So the role is of what? Role is not of a leader. Role is of becoming a catalyst in allowing every member of the congregation to feel elated in the spirit, to join with them in worshiping. What is the responsibility? Responsibility is to make sure that they are prepared with that firm consciousness as the ministers of God during that 45 minutes or 1 hour singing and praising, that they are serving the people. They are ministering unto them. And the result, their success is only when the congregation is able to connect with them and move into it, which is the most lively worship. It is not the band that sings, but the band or the, sorry to use the word band, can give a concert look. But here is a choir, a team that leads the congregation to worship. Their success is in generating that response from the congregation, that they are able to connect with them and they together sing. They together sing. If the singing group is too good and they sing too beautifully and with too many technical things, that the congregation feels cut out. That's where a worship team's worship leading as a ministry turns out to be a performance. If it has to be a ministry, you must be serving the congregation. Congregation must feel like join with you, and your prayer in preparation, your prayer in doing everything there is people oriented.
So just a question on that. Like you said, it's serving people, right? And it needs a lot of preparation. But as worship leaders, I'm pretty sure most of us watching, being themselves worshippers, the one of the difficulties that they are facing would be in corporate worship, people coming from different backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
There are different age group, right? There are people from different places. And as a worshipper, for me, if I would say, right, my parents would like to listen to a hymn and worship, but for me it would be a good upbeat song, right? How can a worshipper, in his time of preparation, can cater to the common need of people?
Friends, this is where, if I am the worship leader, I must very consciously think of what I want to do and why I want to do.
Right.
If I am the minister of God, his instrument to enable people in time of worship, like you said, your parents' privilege of joining with you in going before the throne of God in worship is your ministry, it's your concern. It's not your interest of singing upbeat songs which your generation will like.
Right.
But you are the minister of God at that moment on the stage.
Right.
You are equally responsible to your peer group and to your parents. And you as the minister of God, it's your responsibility to ensure in your planning onwards, selection of song onwards, into everything, that these different groups are brought together. Some of the songs sometimes are beautiful, very talented singing, but the congregation stands like this. They admire your singing, and they may be humming here and there some sentences, some lines. The worship team has failed. They have done a good performance. They have demonstrated the talent very well, but they have desperately failed in becoming the ministers of God in the worship context. Because in the minister, if you have to be the minister of God in that worship context, your singing, your planning should be such that people are able to join with you.
Right.
So, there may be some fantastic songs which will really demonstrate how talented you are. You will not take that into congregational song. You may have that as a special song sung probably during offering. You may give a chance to someone. I was talking very practically. You may give at that time for him or her to demonstrate their talent, which is very important for the glory of God. But in the time of praise and worship, you will be always conscious. If I miss out one segment of the congregation because of my choice of songs, I have desperately failed to minister in God's name to them that morning.
Understood. That being said, Doctor, what I would like to understand is, right, I cannot choose a certain song which will bring out my talents, but it's something that has to cater the entire church.
So this is about the priority. When you are on the pulpit as the minister of God, as a partnering team in conducting that worship, your talents are very important, but your purpose is more important. So this is where in worship we should talk about two important words: form and function. We can talk more about this in relation to songs and music, but the form is secondary to function. So your role as the worship leader, what you do, if it is not helping you to achieve the function or the purpose of what you're doing, then this is not important. The end result is more important. So your talent, my talent in good singing, good instrument playing is very good, as long as it is serving the purpose of catering to the need of the worshiping community that is there that day morning in front of you.
So, in a spirit-oriented worship or a spirit-inspired worship, what is the importance of spontaneity? So, is spontaneity important in a spirit-inspired worship, or does it guarantee that does spontaneity guarantee that it is spirit-led, or what are your views on spontaneity?
Okay. So, with the modern charismatic spirit-inspired, spirit-oriented worship style that has emerged, not just in from 19th century around onwards, that has slowly picked up pace, and then that's where we find the roots, and then it grew completely, and now it has become a popular form. Spontaneity is very important. Definitely, spontaneity allows the spirit to take control of the situation and enable the worshipper to move in that flow. When the spirit wants to, if you are too ossified in your system, in your form, you may fail in your function of allowing the spirit to be playing a role in the thing, because you will be more stuck to this hymn, this song, this hymn, this song, this reading, and then you will say, my 2 hours, 1.5 hours of worship is over. But you have not allowed people to connect with God. But on the other side, if spontaneity is not giving room for the worshipper to introspect, contemplate about oneself, about God, and then to reflect upon one's own life, think about one's own sinfulness, repent, seek forgiveness, experience the love of God, still you have failed.
So it's a balance.
It's a balance. So spontaneity in itself doesn't guarantee spirit movement. But this spontaneity must be surrendered to the authority of the Spirit.
Cool.
That is from prayer, initial preparatory time onwards, your prayer onwards, selection of the song onwards, your practice of worship, the freedom that you give to congregation to engage into it, and then otherwise your talent itself can be another form which you are imposing on people and curtailing the movement of the Spirit.
Since we are discussing on this, the other day we were talking with our worship coordinators, and they gave us a very interesting incident that since we are talking about, not allowing or not letting the spirit to flow through worship in spontaneity, this particular kid asked, why am I not part of worship? Is that because I'm not baptized? My question is, how important is the role of baptism, the role of tongues in the worship? And because in the spirit oriented worship, I think we focus a lot more on tongues, right? Yeah, in certain tradition, of course. But is that actually true? Does tongue facilitates a spontaneous worship, or is that our thought process that provokes it?
Okay, so I say two important things you are asking. Is baptism important to be a worship leader?
Yeah.
Well, he may not be able to make a rule out of it, but definitely one who has surrendered his or her life to the Lordship of Christ and has made a conscious choice to walk according to his way will take baptism, right? Because baptism is an external testimony of the internal experience. It's not merely a ritual. So one who has not done that is actually refraining from that authority of. It might be a little difficult for the person to stand immediately and talk about the Lordship of Christ on life, surrendering your life and all those things. But then the counter question could be, I'm just thinking along, the counter question could be, so that means all baptized people will be always under the Lordship of Christ? No, they are human beings. They might fail sometimes, but they have made a conscious decision to surrender their life to the Lord, which you have not made. You have not come to a stage to say that, okay, I am willing to make every effort and yield myself to the voice of the Spirit to live a life, Christ-like life. But this person has made that. And then there may be human failures out of which the person may be able to recover it. The second part that you are asking, what speaking in tongues? Speaking in tongues is actually the result of the inner experience of the movement of the Spirit. It's not a external thing that needs to be garnished. Sometimes, speaking in tongues can be very mechanical garnishing over something over a dish. In the same way, to make the worship more active, sometimes we garnish. Sorry to use these words, but sometimes you feel that you garnish some tongues here and there. Question is, the one who is speaking needs to ask before God that, is that genuinely flowing out of heart as the experience of the Spirit within, or is it a very mechanical utterances? Now, another person cannot judge it. I wouldn't judge, but I would always say that if I am doing it, I must judge my heart and my practice before God. And if I feel that, well, I'm garnishing it, I must refrain from it, because God doesn't need garnishing. This moment of the Spirit can be. So speaking in tongues is the result of the Spirit experience, not the other way around.
So in today's segment, we were able to cover a few points, and we were able to discuss about the topic of the practice and the practitioner. We were able to cover what it means to be a true worshipper, what is the attitude that a true worshipper must have, and a little bit about what are the roles and responsibilities of a worship leader in a biblical sense and in a Christ-centered worship. And we were also able to talk about how important spontaneity is in a Spirit-inspired worship. So in the next segment, we'll be talking a little bit more about music and the selection of songs. Stay tuned for that. Thank you.